Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Personalized CX in Travel Cross-Industry panel. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today. As we all know, personalized CX isn't going away. For the 21st century customer, it's now an expectation rather than a luxury. If you want to leapfrog the competition and discover what the industry experts are doing in order to reinvent quality CX and deliver a quality personalized experience to your customers, then you've come to the right place. Today, our interactive webinar will feature discussion on how to identify which consumer experiences are sustainable and which are not, in terms of empowering your CX strategy by pinpointing those guest experiences that will really allow your business to fulfill long-term consumer expectations. We'll also talk about how thinking local can broaden your CX offering and discover how effective experiential CX can really allow you to make use of a higher price point within your own business. We'll also talk a little bit about what the personalization of CX can achieve in the next 5 years, which will allow you to really get ahead of the curve within your business and employ personalization techniques that will strengthen your CX offering. I'm Christian with WhyHotel by Reuters Events, and we will be shortly joined by two senior executives within the travel industry who are taking leaps to redefine forward-thinking and customer-focused CX. But first, some introductions. WhyHotel is, by its own admission, an industry disruptor. It's an accommodation provider that is equal parts hotel and alternative accommodation. A novel business model by operating pop-up hotels within luxury rental spaces in a way that blurs the line between hospitality and home. Featured in the likes of CNBC, Forbes, the Washington Post, and USA Today, WhyHotel is in many ways redefining the customer experience in an era where alternative accommodation provides guests with a way of enjoying the convenience of a hotel without all of the arduous booking processes and cookie-cutter experiences that the more traditional accommodation providers can sometimes suffer from. A recent Reuters Events Travel Summit white paper featured the invaluable insights of WhyHotel CEO Jason Fudin. I'm now delighted to welcome Bao Vuong, WhyHotel's president and co-founder, to this webinar. How are you doing this morning, Bao?
Good. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about the customer experience. It's at the core of what we do, so I'm excited to get into it.
Super. Our second panelist today comes from the San Diego Padres. Founded in 1969, the San Diego Padres need little introduction. Two-time National League pennant winners and winners of 4 division titles. Despite their on-field prowess, much of their success must be placed with the team behind the scenes, committed to creating an exceptional fan experience at the ballpark and making a positive impact in the San Diego community. If anyone knows how to create quality personalized experience, it's the Padres. I'm delighted to welcome Erin Sheehan, the Senior Director of Guest Experience at the Padres, to this webinar. How are you doing this morning, Erin?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And finally on this call, I'd like to introduce the staff editor here at WhyHotel by Reuters Events, Pamela Whitby. Pamela has co-authored the white papers and a lot of the content that we produce over for our travel summit, which is this June in San Diego. How are you doing this afternoon, Pam?
I'm very good, thanks, Christian. Great to be here. Very, very happy to chat to both Bao and Erin, and really looking forward to hearing more about what you're doing with the customer experience.
Super. So for listeners to this webinar, we're going to follow a format of asking some questions to our panelists, really getting to the heart of the customer experience and the initiatives that they're involving themselves in to enhance efforts in that area within their own companies. We're, after exploring some of their own initiatives, we're going to follow up with some audience questions. So feel free to send your questions in now, and we will answer them throughout the course of the webinar. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about our WhyHotel white paper and some of the customer experience research that we've been doing on our end before talking a little bit about the future of CX. So to begin, Bao, regarding sustainability, and by that I mean CX initiatives that are going to last in the long term, how do you as a company at WhyHotel identify which consumer experience strategies are the really good long-term investments and which quite simply are not?
Yep. What it may, maybe I'll start with first framing the discussion around and going a little bit more detail into our business model, because I think that really informs how we identify those customer experiences that are sustainable.
Sure.
So as you mentioned before, we're a pop-up hotel operator. We really made up that term with respect to hotels. So when somebody builds a high-rise apartment building, 300, 400, 500 units, they usually deliver all those units at the same time and empty, right, to the building owner. And it naturally takes anywhere from a year or two to fill those apartments up with long-term residents. And so we'll come in, we'll partner with the building owner, take anywhere from 100 plus of those units, fully furnish them, and run a hotel in the vacancy. And so what that means for our guests is that they get to experience a brand new, full-size apartment with all the amenities and luxuries of an apartment building, which are these days very similar to that of a hotel, right? For a limited period of time. And so back to your original question around the customer experience and understanding what are sustainable and what not, I think it first starts with understanding who our core customers are. We can't be everything to everybody. And so although we do have a wide range of guests who stay with us, our core customers are really the road warrior business travelers, right, who may be coming in and out of a city on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. It's groups and family travelers, and it's our extended stay guests who may stay with us from 10 days to 6 months, right? And our baseline offering to those guests is really a differentiated experience. It's providing them a like home experience, but with the consistency, quality, and security of a hotel, right? We do that through both our physical product, right, and in addition to the services and experiences and amenities that we offer from a service perspective, right? And from a physical product, right, it's, with the business travelers, they want the feeling of home, but when they're traveling constantly on the road, but they don't really want to take the risk and gamble of something like an Airbnb. And so having on-site 24/7 staff helps provide that security, right, and that sense of a quality level that they're used to. And on the experiences side, and as we start, one of the advantages of being a startup is that we don't have long established brand standards as typical hotel flags do. And so we're really able to experiment with a lot of new things. So really our only brand standard today is really being brand new, right? And being a like home product, right? And so we're able to pilot things and new experiences in a way that I think others can't. And so because our hotels are naturally shorter in lifespan, because we're only in buildings anywhere from 9 months to a year, we like to beta test things and things that go really well and that are accretive to the guest experience, we bring on to the next hotel, and things that aren't, slowly and quickly and quietly fade away into the background.
Sure.
So, Bao, I'd just like to ask you, how many, I think with the Columbia hotel group that you're just opening this week, I think, or you announced last week, that takes you to 5 operational sites. How many have you actually closed to date?
So we have closed 4 hotels to date. So we've opened, yep, and we've opened a total of 7. Primarily in the Washington, D.C. area and in the Seattle, Washington area. And we're getting ready to open our next hotel in 2 weeks in Houston, Texas. So we're super excited about that.
Yeah, I was reading about that this morning. So just tell me, so you're talking about lessons that you're learning along the way being a brand new group. Tell me about some of the lessons you've learned so far. When I interviewed Jason, one of the things that he said was that we were talking about what some of the hotels are doing, building partnerships with things like DoorDash and, these food delivery companies. And he was saying that was something that you're working on. Tell me a bit about some of the lessons that you've learned so far from the buildings that you've closed, and what's on the horizon, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think that the way that we look at building our brand and types of offerings that we provide is really around kind of a la carte luxury. All right. And a lot of our guests and travelers are very savvy and they're independent and they want a premium physical product and space, but they don't necessarily need all the additional services of a traditional luxury hotel. Think bellhops, think, room service, think valet parking, right? That really drive up the cost that they may not need or want, right, in a hotel room. And I think to your point around really leveraging the gig economy and what exists today is really where we're moving towards with our customer experience strategy, is that our guests, and that goes back to the like home experience. Our guests are very savvy and they already use the likes of Uber Eats and Postmates today, right, to get room service type service at home. They use Amazon Fresh and Instacart today, right? And so really what we're focused on is making that experience better and easier for them. So, and less friction. So as an example, one of the things that we've done in our Ballston location, so this is in Arlington, Virginia, is we've partnered with local restaurants to provide room service like an amenity. And so, and this isn't necessarily with Uber Eats or Postmates, but instead of our guests having to use those apps and services, we put a QR code in the room where our guests can snap a picture of the QR code. And what it does is in a few seconds, it pulls up a website that has a curated list of restaurants, right, that will provide door-to-door service for them. And so not only will it deliver great, hot, local food, but because of their partnership with us, they get a discount, right? So that's one of the things that has gone really well. I will say that some things haven't gone quite as planned also. One of the things that we piloted in our property is having Amazon Alexas in our rooms and a texting service that allows our guests to connect with our 24/7 on-site staff in a immediate and quick way. And what we quickly realize is that when you set those expectations and you use that technology, they're used to getting the service level that they're have been accustomed to through texting and Alexa, which is immediate. And we really just weren't staffed up and did not realize the impact that it would have on our operational capabilities to be able to respond to a text within effectively 15 seconds, right? Anything longer than that, the guests are like, well, what's going on? Because they're used to that immediate gratification from the texting side. And so we ended up having to scrap that as an amenity, as a service level. And what we've done is instead, we're moving towards just one-way interactions, our ability to just push information to our guests that way, and them to provide feedback to us, but not in a live manner.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially from the viewpoint of not just the successes, but the sort of the pitfalls of experiential CX. Obviously, the travel industry is manifold, and there are so many different sub areas within the travel industry. One of the sort of areas that might not be traditionally conceived of as within the travel industry is the sports industry. But of course, as I'm sure Erin, you are all too familiar with, the demographic of people coming to your games is quite often one and the same as the sorts of people that are going to the hotels and taking flights out to San Diego, holidaying, the travelers that are wanting to experience the sort of the game that they're going to. What do you think the professional sports industry is doing particularly well to streamline the guest experience from your perspective at the Padres?
Yeah, sure. We do have the same customers and the same guests in a very kind of different setting. Obviously, we have hot dogs and peanuts and a lot of loud noises and things, but that's all part of our experience that people are coming for. With the Padres, 60% of our fan base are actually out-of-town tourists. So San Diego, we're blessed to have nice weather pretty much year round, and we have a huge tourism base. We're actually the only Major League Baseball team that has an actual tourism department focused on attracting people to come see the ballpark while they're visiting San Diego. We're located right next to the convention center that does a lot of business year round. So we drive a lot of tourists just to come check out the ballpark, whether or not we actually have a baseball game going on.
Sure.
But specifically with baseball, it's an interesting, and I love hearing Bao's experience, because as he was talking about lessons learned and even the a la carte service, very similarly, we have the same expectations from the guests coming, whether they are local season ticket members that are coming to 81 games a season, or if they're just visiting San Diego. That's different clientele that we have to tailor our guest experience to, and we have to train our staff and really empower them to identify the difference between those two guests that are coming, and also how to enhance their experience, no matter if they're from out of town or if they come 81 games. Or in San Diego and with the Padres, we focus a lot more than just baseball games. We have a lot of events that are attracting a different clientele, such as Monster Jam, with monster trucks crashing into each other, and we convert the field, the baseball diamond, into a dirt pit, or Paul McCartney coming, or concerts, or things like that. So we have very similar experience strategy, and also a focus on what type of guests are coming. It's different in the way where we are very event driven, where we have 50,000 guests coming through our doors for one event, and then we get to reset and focus again for the next event. So in terms of what I think the sports industry as a whole are doing really well, I think there's a lot of crossover with hotels, with travel, and I love sharing and learning best practices across those industries, because I think that's where we really can get the most innovation across industries. But I think for sports, the NFL and Major League Baseball specifically are doing a great job with, and for lack of better reason, for simply volume. Having 50,000 guests come in, or in the NFL, 100,000 or more guests come in through your gates, you really need to focus on empowering and training your frontline staff, which often are, I know across the board people call ushers or stewards or ticket takers or concessions, the people serving the hot dogs, the people scanning the tickets, and really getting them to buy in. And it really starts with how you recruit and how you hire and how you onboard and how that experience for your frontline staff is. I'm in the middle of our preseason trainings right now, where we take the time and focus, and I'm training my full-time staff, that how we make the experience for our frontline part-time staff to enter for their training, or what kind of food we decide to feed them during their training experience, will have a natural ripple effect impact on how they treat our customers or our guests when they come in to work their shifts every game. And so we, I think as a whole in the sports industry, when I go to our conferences, spend a lot of time comparing best practices across the board on how we instill our service vision and values and our guest experience values across all of our part-time staff and partners, and train them to really be the ones that deliver that impact on the front line. So I think that's a big takeaway. We focus a lot on I consult with the NFL as well. They have an entire recognition team of professionals that go around just looking for frontline staff to recognize based on their service values of putting fans first, and really put a lot of resources and effort into that. And it really does move the needle as far as improving the guest experience, as far as when you measure your success. other ways, and I can go into it. Bao made me think of a million other things that we're doing similarly, but we with the
Erin,
technology. Yes.
Erin, hi. It's Pamela here. I actually just wanted to interject there because I did an interview with the Edmonton Oilers last week, and so a few things popped into my head while you were speaking. And
Sure.
one of the things that he was saying was that they've just built this new ice district, and getting the right data in front of the right people has proved quite a challenge. So can you maybe talk a bit about the sort of technology that underpins getting the right information to the frontline staff? Because I think that's absolutely crucial in an environment where you've got so many customers coming through the door.
Absolutely. We measure through different ways, and I think the days of what in our world fan feedback surveys are kind of dying, and we're trying to get a little bit better at measuring real-time data and gathering through things like in-game, showing a QR code or showing a survey, and getting how are we doing now in the moment so that we can fix things. That data is not good or not valid unless we actually trickle it down to the actual employees that are interacting with our guests. So we do at the Padres a daily, every event, we share our experience survey results, and we tell the frontline ushers how we're doing, how they're doing. We measure our ballpark cleanliness, our overall experience, our staff friendliness, concessions, food and beverage, safety, all of the different elements, and we share those scores. And I think that's a different trend, at least in our world in sports. We share that with the frontline staff, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or whether it's excellent. And we use that as measurable drivers and motivators, really, to say, okay, let's push the needle so that we can improve. And this event, we really need to focus on cleanliness because our scores last game were not as high as what we want them to be.
Well, that's really, it's really good to hear that, because as you were saying earlier, this is it's across customer experiences across every industry, and so I think the hotels will find it really interesting to hear how you're addressing some of these issues.
Yeah,
definitely.
And sharing that with frontline is very difficult sometimes, with even just visibility and access, right? So you really have to find the ways that make sense in your venue or building or organization with how do you actually reach those frontline employees? Is it in their break rooms? Is it email? Is it an app? What is it? And how do you share the information in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that sentiment, Erin. And obviously, from your perspective, Bao, you talked a little bit about how you sort of had the Amazon Alexa trialed in some of your locations. Obviously, there's a large data element involved in that. But I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about how, from your perspective at WhyHotel, you're utilizing experiential and personalized CX within your business in other ways, whether or not it utilizes data and analyzes customer behavior or not.
Yeah, we use a product, and the one beautiful thing about hotel experiences and the guests that stay with us is that they're not shy about giving feedback. Both public feedback and private feedback. And so we use a monitoring service called Medallia, which not only measures net promoter scores, but also aggregates all of the public online reviews, whether that be through TripAdvisor or through Google or through the online travel agents like Expedia and Hotels.com. Helps us aggregate that information and really think through how we may improve our services to our guests at the end of the day. And so that's not only from our booking experience, through our pre-arrival experience, through their in-stay and post-stay experience, all the way through.
Okay, I mean, one interview that I did this last week was also with the head of product at Gates, which I'm sure you've heard of, and she said that in essence their promises to drivers is to send them to work and for the riders to be collected on time. But she said delivering on the promise that you make your customer is never enough to achieve the wow factor. And you have to go further. And I'd just like to hear from both of you how you see that. Do you agree that you've got to deliver more than you say on the tin, essentially, and how are you doing that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think.
Erin.
Go ahead, Erin.
Okay.
No, please.
One of our values, I totally agree. One of our 3 core service values is exceed. Our 3 at the Petco Park promise, we call it, is to care, connect, and exceed. And we train everyone, whether you're in housekeeping or the president, on meeting expectations is no longer good enough. Our expectation and our guest expectation is to go above and beyond. And a couple ways with the personalization. It's easy with our data that we get from our season ticket members to get coming back over and over again, or I would imagine in hotel world, your loyal customers coming back, their preferences. So why not, surprise and delight them and know what their favorite drink is, what their favorite cookie is, when their birthday is, what their kids' names are. And how impressive is that if it's not just the manager coming and doing that birthday surprise, but if every employee that member or that guest interacts with knows, and the communication and the logistics that go into that can be very streamlined if you have the technology and the processes in place to say, hey, Mr. Smith is coming today and it's his 50th birthday and he loves Diet Coke. And you just go through the steps and everyone knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
carry on, Bao.
I think from our perspective, and I think the hospitality industry is really buying into that offering of or that idea of really truly customized offering, right? And I think that you're going to see that manifest itself in really changing, seeing how hotels are going to be physically built. I think in the past, really customizing travel was right in different brands within products were having different types of sheets in the rooms, or whether or not you offer room service, or whether or not you have a bellhop or a concierge. And that's really the difference between a luxury product and kind of a select service hotel. But really the physical box of the room was pretty similar, plus or minus a few square feet, which is around 250 square feet a hotel room, right? But I think that what you're going to see in the future is the physical product of the room start to change, right? And that there's more customization. So you see brands like Yotel and Pods and Moxie who cater towards a traveler who just looking for a place to put their head at night, right? They don't care how big the room is. They don't care that the room's only 100 square feet or 150 square feet because they're only there for the night for 8 hours, right? To a product like ours where our travelers expect something more, and they expect something more than just a hotel suite, right? They're looking for the space and the amenities of home, right? So back to our business traveler who may want to go for a run, right? And their ability to wash and dry their clothes, right? Or even wash and dry their clothes, pack it up in a suitcase and leave it with our front desk so they don't have to travel home with the suitcase when they come back the next week, right? Or for the families and groups that stay with us, I think of the first time I traveled with my daughter, and we stayed at a hotel. My daughter went to bed at 6:30. We turned out the lights, and we could either choose to, sit on the bed in the dark and watch our iPads, or go into the bathroom and turn on the light and have a glass of wine, right? And so with our services and like home experience that we were providing our guests, it's a differentiated experience. And so even within a 1-bedroom where, you can put your child to sleep, in the room, close the door and still be an adult, right? Or having a full-size fridge so that you can store your milk overnight, so when your kid wakes up at 7 a.m. and they're screaming for their milk, that it's right there and readily available. And I think that providing those truly customized experience, not only on the services side, but really the physical product side, is really going to change the hotel industry.
Absolutely. We've actually just had a question coming through here from one of the participants. I mean, he's asked whether WhyHotel takes only newly constructed buildings, but I think that's the case, isn't it, at the moment? And then whether you are investing in interior design or turnkey apartments that are adjusted for brand standards. I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure what that means, but yeah, I mean, are you investing in interior design? I guess that is a good question.
Yep. So I think there's so in terms of our physical product, yes, we only go into brand new high-rise apartments, and the reason for that is because we're able to get regulatory approvals for our use in those buildings. And so we operate a little bit differently from traditional Airbnbs or other alternative lodging providers because we get our hotel license. And so the only way to do that, we could not do that in an existing building. From an interior design perspective, yes, we do we partner with so our model, because our model is only temporary and because we're in other people's buildings, largely we get to leverage off of their knowledge and their services, right? So a developer generally doesn't go out and try to build a Class B apartment building, right? Everybody, when they build brand new, is trying to build the next best thing. And so we really get to draft off that. And where we have control is the interior unit furnishings, right? And the kitchen amenities. And we do spend a lot of time curating and crafting those products within the apartment unit to make sure that not only do they meet our customers' needs, but they meet the design aesthetic of the building and the design aesthetic of the city that we're operating in.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much for your response there. Just a reminder to all of the listeners that are currently listening into this webinar, we are going to have a brief audience question section. So I can see that a lot of questions are already streaming in. It would be good to have a few more of you sort of sharing your input, and I'm sure we can put across those questions to our panelists. Bao, you talked a little bit about personalization and how the hotel guest especially is more and more demanding personalization within their everyday experience. And it's also good to hear from you how, sort of calling back to what you said at the beginning, you can't cater for everybody within the industry. You have to really know your market. But I'd be curious to hear from your perspective what you think the future of CX personalization looks like, both from your perspective as sort of an operator of self-styled pop-up hotels, but also from the travel industry's perspective more broadly.
Yeah, so I think, so really two things. One is that, and Erin touched on it a little bit, but it's really how to leverage technology along with humans and on-site staff to really provide that kind of customized service levels. And I think that there are really kind of two schools of thought out there around tech, is that there are many who believe that tech will replace humans with respect to providing customized services. With paperless check-ins, texting when there's an issue instead of talking to a live person. And our belief is that, the technology just isn't there yet. And really we think of as that tech enables a better hospitality service, but at the end of the day, it's really about better leveraging the on-site staff to provide those services, to make somebody smile, and to the ability to diffuse a situation. And so I think that that's where we think of it. And as an example, I think, so traditional hotels, you'll see 3 or 4, front desk staff at a typical hotel, and really they're front desk staff, and they're there to check you in, and they're pounding away behind their computers. They're taking your credit card and swiping it. They're checking your ID, and eventually getting you to sign something. As opposed to what we do today is, we're leveraging self-service check-ins, but not totally humanless. So we use those self-service check-ins to allow the process to speed up, allow our independent and savvy guests to go through the mundane process of, scanning their IDs and entering their credit cards, but it really frees up our guests to be what we call guest experience associates, right? And focusing on putting a smile and an amazing guest experience, right, for our customer. So that's, I think, one of the trends that are happening is really partnering tech with our people to better provide those experiences. And I think generally what we're seeing is, and for the the industry in a larger way, is that there's going to be a blending of hotels and home, and that really today that manifests itself in apartments that are being operated as hotels. But I think in the future, what you'll see is any individual unit at any given point in time are being built and designed to operate as either a home or a hotel, depending upon the macro micro environment, right? And so what's better for the building owner, in addition to what's better for the guests, is that you'll see that I think people now are traveling or spending lower and lower amounts of time in any given location in any given time. And so if you go out and try to get less than a 12-month lease out there, it's very difficult and it's very expensive. And being able to provide the wide range of stays from 1 night to 30-night stay to 180-night stay to a 365-night stay, I think is where the industry is going.
Sure. Yeah, and I can definitely agree, especially interesting when you're talking about the micro and the macro levels. I think a sort of a good way to contrast what you just mentioned there, Bao, is to ask sort of the very same question to you, Erin. What do you think are the key long-term consumer expectations that the travel industry needs to identify in order to streamline and personalize CX in the future from 2020 onwards?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I agree with everything that Bao said, and I love, pairing technology with people, I think is the right approach to this. I think the long term, as a traveler myself, and also talking and understanding, I think flexibility is what more and more guests are wanting with their schedules and with how they travel, and not having to be pinpointed into, whether or not they have to walk up to a self-service kiosk versus a line to talk to a associate to help them, whether it be at the airport or a hotel or a leasing office in an apartment or a stadium or a ballpark. I think people want to design their own experience to some degree, and you can do that, even though that seems like a challenging, a huge challenge to personalize it in my world with 50,000 people coming in at the same time. I think, you can do it in different layers. And, some of the similarities when Bao was talking about the physical improvements in the design and what he offers, even for families who are traveling with an infant, it made me think many ballparks and many stadiums and venues are adding, a nursing suite, and, the way that we make that look and are sponsoring that makes a difference for the mothers that are coming to the games and their ability to bring, their baby or just come themselves. And so I think design, no matter what venue or building or organization you're with, makes a difference in the little things and the communication tools, even at the entry point, like he was talking about how you check in, the flexibility of not having a strict check-in time and figuring out the operations and taking a step back on the highest level to really ask those questions. Why are we making people check in at a certain time, or why are we making people wait in line to come into this gate? And can we do it a different way without totally disrupting our operation? I think is what everybody needs to be thinking of in the long term.
Yeah, Erin, I would absolutely agree that design and really thinking about what your customers want and need is really going to be crucial. We've got a question for Bao that's come in here, which I think is quite a good one, actually. It's how are you driving affinity among customers in the absence of a scaled loyalty program? And this is particularly for business travelers. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality of it is that it comes down to our physical product, right, that we're offering, and that you're right. We don't have the scale yet to make a loyalty program really work. But what we've realized is that that the guests and the business travelers, once they get into the physical product, once they see the space, because we are talking about brand new luxury apartment buildings, they're willing to forgo their points because they want a better experience. For them, it's not about racking up points that they may or may not ever use, but it's being in the moment. It's being having that home-like experience when you're forced to travel 50 out of the 52 weeks of the year. And so really that's where we win, is once we get somebody on site, is that they tend to come back to us.
But do you not think you would sort of start to consider, perhaps not a traditional loyalty program, but there's been a lot of talk about sort of loyalty programs that sort of cross industries and all of that. Is that something that could be a long-term, sort of medium-term thought? I mean, if you really sort of gain traction with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely something that we're considering, and we've also considered more immediate rewards programs for guests that come in and out on a weekly basis or may stay with us long term. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I think that sort of comes to the end of our core question portion there. I'd like to sort of extend my thanks once again to Bao and Erin for really revealing a little bit more about the CX innovations and their views for the future of the customer experience within the travel space. As mentioned earlier, WhyHotel's CEO, Jason Fudin, contributed to our recent Travel Summit white paper on the future of the customer experience within the travel industry, where we interviewed senior executives from companies such as the Xanterra Collection, Flight Centre, Diamond Resorts, WhyHotel itself, and Caesars Entertainment Corporation. We also surveyed over 650 travel industry professionals in the course of our research, where they shared their opinions on the future of customer experience and what trends are set to shape the industry. Today, the Reuters Events Travel Summit has announced a supplementary report with a full industry breakdown of our survey data, so you can plan how your company is going to leapfrog the competition and innovate customer experience from the front line. You should see on your screens sort of a link to our webpage. Feel free to visit our site and download this 9-page exclusive report completely for free, and also feel free to email myself at christian@ifortravel.com. I'd like to sort of pass the floor over to Pam, who was responsible for a lot of the work that went into our white paper, to sort of give a little bit more insight on what it was that sort of was at work with our research there.
So yeah, just very briefly, because we haven't got much time, I just wanted to say we ran this travel survey, CX Trends and Travel Survey. We had about 680 people respond, and with 50% of those being C-level sort of executives. So I think there were quite a lot of interesting stats that came out of it, but one of the most concerning was that 61% of respondents felt that their CX efforts were below par. Having said that, given that 50% of the people who responded were in fact C-level people, founders or presidents, I'm hoping they were just being a little hard on themselves. It's not all bad news though, as 49% of brands said they would be investing more or a lot in customer experience in 20, even though budget constraints are quite a big limitation. This could probably explain why 70% of companies are spending under $1 million in 2020. Also interesting is that despite the focus on customer experience, the role of CXO is still not completely mainstream. Only two-thirds of companies don't have a CXO, but it does seem to be a C-level priority. Surveys, in terms of the emerging technologies which would have the most impact, the usual suspects, AI, virtual assistants, chatbots, and omni-channel engagement solutions. But the good news is, for those of you who are worried about technology taking over, almost all the respondents were confident that AI isn't going to rob them of a job. Anyway, fair to say that the technology is maturing and becoming more mainstream, but there's still a lot more to learn about it. And hopefully you'll be joining us at the Travel Summit 2020 in San Diego, which is the first travel show to run under the banner of Reuters Events, which is a big news for us. And we've got a lot of great people sharing their lineup, including Jason Fuden from WhyHotel, and Erin's also going to be there along with a lot of other top brands, but I'm sure Christian will mention a few of those now.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, you heard it here, folks. Robots aren't going to steal your job, but that's just sort of a little bit of an excerpt from our white paper report, which will go into far more detail than I can explain now about the future of CX and give a little bit more flavor to supplement this webinar and maybe your company's own views on how to reinvigorate and get to the front line when it comes to the customer experience fight for 2020 and beyond. Yeah, I want to extend my thanks again to Erin and Bao for taking the time to give us some insights into the excellent work that they are doing to revolutionize customer experience this decade. Like Pamela said, if you want to reinvigorate your direct bookings and loyalty initiatives, personalize your product, levy powerful partnerships, create authentic experiences, or discover the cutting-edge travel tech that's really going to take your company to the next level, then please do check out our website, where there will be more insights from WhyHotel, from Erin, also, as Pam mentioned earlier, the Edmonton Oilers, Airbnb, Marriott, Hilton, and Get Taxi, and a number of other C-suite executives. So I'd really advise checking that out. Well, like I said, thank you again, Erin and Bao, for your time, and I thank you for everyone that tuned in to listen. Do keep an eye out for our future webinars. We host these regularly, as well as keep an eye out for the sort of supplementary survey report that we are releasing today. But other than that, I think that concludes our webinar today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.